This is from Brown Coat B. Thanks, Brown Coat B. How do you handle toxic gaming culture? One of the reasons I've decided to start DMing is I live in a smallish town in the South. Our culture is still years behind, and this D&D revival hasn't really hit us. Our game shops have a really toxic culture and tend to push away anyone who isn't a straight white guy. For reference, I am a woman, so I already have some trouble to get them to take me seriously. Bummer, and I'm sorry that's happening.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that. I just feel very fortunate in that growing up, my D&D groups were always split, if not more female heavy, just because I sort of created my own. Yeah. And that's what you have to do at the end is you start your own. You said you're becoming a DM, and that's wonderful. That's kind of the way to do it. I wasn't a DM, and so I kind of had to rely on my friends and be like, hey, I'd like to bring in my friends to this group. Is that cool? But since you're a DM, you can invite whoever you want, which is great. And then also online. Online is a good way to do it, either through meetup groups, sort of websites are can be hit and miss and stuff, but you could consider at least starting out using Roll20 or Skype to do online groups, or find your friends and convert them. Yeah. We sort of have to carve out a space for ourselves, and I feel very fortunate in that I've had a lot of support in this, and in our community, both online and here in Los Angeles, it's very inclusive and very welcoming, and so I'm fortunate that I haven't had to deal with that. But in the past, it has been tougher, and so you just have to sort of push on your own. And I'm sorry to have to tell you to do more emotional labor that way, honestly, but I can guarantee you that you will find people that will love it, that will be supportive of you, and that sort of inclusiveness.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think also whenever you're giving this type of advice, there always is that little asterisk at the end of because when someone says how do you handle toxic gaming culture, there is always that balance and scales of well, if you want to do emotional labor and extra work.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like an unfair thing to ask of somebody. It is. But that's, it's been a long buildup, because we remember the days where it was just hard to play, and it's unfortunate now that we were saying before this, it's for all the gatekeepers out there, don't you remember the bad times?
It sets my fucking head on fire. I was the kid. I literally was put in a trash can when I was bullied in school.
Don't you remember other kids slapping the books out of your
fucking hands? And to be
don't be that kid.
To be here in the year fucking 2019 and have people be like, oh, these fake D&D fans. And I'm like, why are you driving the people away? Do you remember the bad times?
I know.
This is good.
I would have killed for this.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
No kidding.
Kill for it.
But it is really hard to think about that. And by the way, this is not limited to gaming culture. Toxic cultures that reinforce patriarchy and heteronormativity and everything are all over in every niche and industry and hobby all over the world. And the answer largely remains the same of, if you have the bandwidth and you have the space in your life to challenge that system, there are going to be people that are grateful to you.
Yeah, I have to say it has been one of the wildest and most wonderful experiences of my life to see it be the safe haven for marginalized groups. Yeah. I sort of talked about how it's sort of the testing grounds and the trial grounds for things you might not be able to explore in your real life. It's been a great place for kids that are LGBTQ or genderqueer, to have these characters that live in this world where that's not an issue.
Yeah.
And I can say personally, my D&D characters started dating girls before I did. So I mean, it's a good place to explore and to be accepted. And you can find those other people. Our community, my Twitter community, bless them, is just the kindest, most positive, sweet people. And a lot of them are, from marginalized groups or are kids that didn't feel accepted growing up. And now they found this place. So online, you will find your people. I promise you.
You will find them, and that's so beautiful. And even as when I was a kid, I was a weird little homeschooler growing up in a little, I was a little homeschooler in the woods. And, I grew up part of the time in New York City and part of the time in the little woods upstate. And we had our little hippie homeschooler group with even as a little 11-year-old boy, we had gender parity in my home group. But I remember a couple of years ago watching this explosion online of the embrace of 5th edition by the LGBT community. Yeah. And there was a moment of me being like, whoa, well, that's not. And then immediately I was like, why are you surprised? A game of heroic fantasy where our differences all come together to make us huge props to Wizards of the Coast for leaning into that.
Yeah. Of saying specifically, your character might not identify as male or female, and using pronouns that are mixed, or just completely, there's a trans Magic the Gathering planeswalker. It's just for them to understand that this is a safe place for everybody is really huge, and I thank them for helping to foster that community.
I 100% agree, and thank you for that question, Brown Coat B. Mm-hmm. And also, if you're listening to this and you are, I'll say that the other flip side of this advice is if you're listening to this and you are someone who's not marginalized and doesn't, or this is new information. Mm-hmm. You have stuff to do as well. Make sure that your home game is inclusive, and that you are not either certainly not intentionally, but also not unintentionally making your table unwelcoming, and make sure that if there are people in your local gaming store or at your local game night, that they are being invited, included.
Yeah, it's true. And again, it's that's what I say is it's a lot of emotional labor for somebody who already has to struggle with that on the daily basis. But if you don't have to, you can just lend an extra hand and everything, and make sure to welcome people who might have, traditionally had a hard time of it. And it's just, I can't tell you how huge it's been for me to have people, who are sort of cooler or, more accepted or never had to deal with that growing up, being going out of their way to, sort of cast diversely, or, welcome other people to the table, or present diversity in characters.
Yeah, I think it is a moral necessity on the behalf of people, because for someone to stand up for themselves and challenge systems from that position is 1 skrillion times harder than that's a real number, is a skrillion times harder than someone who has that privilege taking it upon themselves without being asked to just make it more welcoming on their own behalf.
And I see that a lot in the community as well. So I thank everybody for that.